Employment and Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi will be in partnership with the KwaZulu-Natal Premier Nomusa Dube-Ncube and the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Government launch 49 labour activation programs at the Durban Exhibition Centre today. Now, the launch will take place as a media breakfast session and it forms part of a national rollout plan to create more than 700,000 employment opportunities across the country. Let's cross now to SABC News reporter Jade Pula, who's there for us. Jade, good morning. So always, important these type of activations given the socio-economic conditions prevalent in our country. But again, talk to us about what's to be expected today.
Well, a very good morning to you, Sakina, and to the viewers back at home. And I think for a province like KwaZulu-Natal, it is very important to look at employment opportunities here in KZN, but not only in KZN, across the country where we see a high rate of unemployment. Now, today's event is a culmination of activation programs that are being rolled out simultaneously across the country. And this one is one of the biggest ones. We are told there are going to be 5,000 students that will be occupying this space, as well as various stakeholders and dignitaries discussing this 49 activation programs that will be rolled out. And this is very important because it looks at skills development. It looks at how the country's schooling is doing. What activation programs are going to be looking at also, Sakina, is the challenges that some of these learners are faced with. We've got subjects like consumer studies that most kids are doing from grade 10 to 12, but how can they plow back into the economy once they finish their schooling education? Well, to unpack this all for us, I am joined by the Minister of Employment and Labour Relations, Mr. Thulas Nxesi. Thank you so much for joining us, Minister. Very important day. We know that unemployment is at all-time high in the country. I want to talk about these 49 activation programs and how they're going to be ensuring that our students, the learners of this country, are getting more skills development when they enter into the labour market.
Good morning. Indeed, this is an important program because if you have listened to the analysts and opinion makers, the major problem in terms of our unemployment, it's structural, which means it's linked to the issue of the lack of skills. What we're doing here, the issue of training, retraining, it has become very, very important. Hence then, we are training and retraining our students from or in the different industries, just for the first time to be trained, but later on, that's how different this program from the previous program is. It's that these should be placed in the employment places, and we must be able to monitor them, how they are performing. It's not just simple training, it's also putting them. Then we're saying in those workplaces, then we're saying, even if it's 2 years, some of these programs are short-term programs, some of them are medium-term programs, and some of them are long-term programs. They can have, I would say, permanent employment, whereas others, it can be employment for 2, 3, or 4 years, but others might be very short-term. But also, we are doing this in partnership with the number of departments and the provinces. For instance, the Minister of Small Business Development, some of the young people want to be trained to do their own small businesses, and they want some capacity in that particular area. And we're also involving a number of departments, the electricity departments. We've been talking about, we are installing the new technology now in the form of the solar, technology in our houses. Who is going to do it? We're training those young people with the Department of Electricity to be able to install those, but not just install, but also they have to maintain them. So you can see, depending on the industry where we're working. In agriculture, we're also involved with the Ministry of Agriculture. So it's an interdepartmental partnership, but also together with all spheres of government, with the provinces, because that's what we're implementing. We're going into all the provinces. So this big launch here in KZN, it's launching it nationally. Last week, Gauteng had started with theirs. We had to come and join them. But today's activity is the main launch where we're going to be explaining how it happens.
And as a province, as rural as KwaZulu-Natal, I imagine that some of the skills development are going to be tackling some of the issues that we also have in the country. You speak of electricity, you also speak of other skills, but talk to us about what exactly these 49 activation programs are and how were these 5,000 learners handpicked? Was there a certain criteria that they had to go through?
We had made adverts in our own website. We've put adverts in the newspapers for those who have an interest to be able to make proposals. And people did express interest, different practitioners who are doing training and so on. But you won't believe it. We had close to 2,000 people or 2,000 companies or NGOs who expressed interest, but we had to go through a particular process of looking and analyzing their proposals if they are really practical and look at the financial implications. And that process was a very long process. But I must also tell you that some of those applications were even before the COVID 2020, 2021. But unfortunately, because of the disruption of the COVID, we couldn't do anything for 2 years. And now that the COVID is over, that's why we're coming in mass in terms of these programs. Their programs will be in agriculture, there will be people will be trained in IT, and people will be trained in small businesses which they want to do. They will be trained. They are different in almost all the industries. We are training the young people, but we're doing that in partnership with some of the employers, so that once people have been trained, they are able to be absorbed on a temporal or even on a medium-term basis. That's how it's going to work.
I actually just wanted to pick up from there. Looking at some of the sectors that have really been knocked since COVID-19, but also the unrest, the 2021 July unrest, such as Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, we saw some of the sectors really being knocked and still trying to climb and find their feet. Can you just mention a few?
I must just put this in a proper context. In 2008, in response to the economic meltdown, we had this particular scheme. Every time there's a crisis, we deal with this. There was a problem, for instance, in Edcon, who had to save the jobs of 140,000 workers. And during COVID, we had to do the same. And the particular example which we are talking about, we had to save, but it had to do especially in the retail and so on. But the major problem during the destruction of the jobs or that particular violence was just the destruction of the workplaces. And we had to get in and try and help the workers to pay for the salaries, whilst the companies, all the companies in all the industries were still trying to rebuild their workplaces. That's where we're seated. But I must emphasize, it's a major problem. If you look at the 2 million jobs we lost during COVID and currently what we are having, so this has become one of the priorities which have been put by the president in terms of the ERRP to say mass public employment programs are very critical in all the spaces where we can be able to do that.
Thank you very much for talking to us on SABC News, Minister Thulas Nxesi, the Employment and Labour Minister of South Africa. Just touching on this activation program, 49 activation programs launched here in KwaZulu-Natal, looking at some of the sectors that really need assistance, but also grassroots level, Sakina, tackling employment, looking at how they can implement some of the skills development and addressing it with the youth. 5,000 learners will be filling up this Durban Exhibition Centre, and they will be engaging with various NGOs, with various businesses to usher them into the labour force market, to show them some of the skills development, but also looking at the rural parts of KwaZulu-Natal and what is needed there.